Hey, what is up, guys? Evan Aldo here. Haven't done a vlog in a while. In southern Connecticut, Milford, Connecticut, actually, right by the coast. Beautiful, nice area. I grew up kind of close to here. Yeah, pretty close to here. So, basically, I'm going to start out kind of, with what I think crypto is doing right now, just, kind of from a fundamental standpoint. I mean, we're still very early. Which is kind of gets reiterated to me a lot whenever I talk to family or anybody about crypto. Most people don't really understand it, and that's that's the main theme I kind of learned from like a lot of people. Now they kind of have, like, just people in general, I mean, they kind of have a view on something that they don't really know much about, and they think they have all the answers about it. Kind of they think they know kind of what's going to happen, even though they haven't really studied it that much. I remember one thing I read about or heard about when I was younger was Jacques Fresco. He would talk to people in the 1940s, 1950s, and he would ask people, "Oh, when do you think we're going to make it to the moon? When do you think astronauts are going to make it to the moon?" And people would always say, like, "Oh, not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years." They would think it was so far away, even up to the 1950s. And he would ask them, have you studied rocket science? Have you studied physics? Have you studied all these things? And they'd be like, no. So it's kind of, you kind of have to check. That's one of the things for being successful. You have to be open-minded, number one, and you have to leave your ego aside. You got to leave your ego aside, because you kind of want to pretend, like a lot of people always want to act like they know everything and they know what's going to happen. And I mean, just look at like average predictions on, I don't know, CNBC, like from popular people. They're always usually off. And I mean, the masses always seem to get things wrong. It's very, I don't think I've ever seen it one time where the general view of the masses gets it right. And that's another thing too. Like, the bigger you get in terms of, I don't know, subscribers on YouTube, viewer base, all these type of things, the bigger that you get, the more you're going to influence the masses, the more that people are going to follow what you're saying. And the fact that the masses usually never get it right means you're going to be wrong more as you get bigger. I'm not going to say any names, but there were some YouTubers that I used to watch, about a year back, when they were, nothing. Well, not nothing, but they were doing well. But I mean, they did not have, they probably had a 10th, maybe a 5% of the viewer base that they have now. And their predictions back then were spot on. Now, they're getting it wrong, all the time. They're influencing the masses. That's kind of that principle. Kind of like the Jim Cramer type of what happens with that. I'm sure he was right more often than he is now, and no one really listened to him. You know what I mean? It's all about the masses. That's one thing I've been thinking about a lot. I mean, the fact that, the average person still thinks crypto is kind of out there. They still think, that I talk to, they still think, incredibly risky. Somebody told me that crypto was something you do if you're very rich and you have no time or you have nothing to do all day. That's what it was. So yeah, that type of thing. But I mean, I think most of us, I think we want to be wealthy, and that's another thing too. Like, I think I've said this before, but people say that everyone wants to be wealthy, everyone wants to be rich, but I don't think a lot of people actively are thinking about it. Like, a lot of people are always saying, like, oh, there's negatives to being rich, there's negatives to, and they're right, obviously. I mean, but I feel like they're not. Most people are kind of going for status. They're just trying to fit in more towards society, whatever that is. And the people they're listening to towards what's, in their group, and, these type of things. And, it's going to work. You're going to get wealthy if your group is very wealthy that you're trying to fit in with. But if your group is just average or whatever, it's not going to, you're just going to be like them. Obviously, another very important point, I like to stress this a lot, is don't take advice from anyone you don't want to be like. If you don't want to be like, if you take advice from somebody, you're going to end up more like them probably 95% of the time. Because I don't know about you, but when I ever give advice to somebody, I usually tell them the things that to do, the things that I've done. So they're just going to end up being more like me if they follow that advice. So that's another thing to think about. Obviously, I mean, these are important points. I mean, the family that you have. Why do the rich stay rich, poor stay poor? You could say that, they inherit the money, that the connections were brought to them. It's easier if you were, brought up with a lot of money to make money. I think it's more kind of the thoughts taught, the thoughts instilled to them. They're told, they're used to law of attraction. They're used to what it's like to be rich. So they find ways to entertain that, to keep that, even if they don't have the highest IQ level. So that's another important point to keep in mind. So a few other things I want to talk about, things that I've learned kind of recently, and recently meaning within the last 2 years, I would say, is, I originally found Naval Ravikant, and he is probably, I don't think I would be, I think there's probably a 99% chance I would not be as successful right now if I did not find him. Originally listened to his Joe Rogan interview about 2 years ago, stumbled upon it or whatever. Actually, one of my mentors at the time told me about him, and I was, I was open-minded to it. It was his How to Get Rich podcast or whatever, 3 hours long. Listened to that. Also listened to his Joe Rogan interview, and it was really, it was kind of what I was interested in it. Let's say that. Like, I was interested in the kind of lifestyle he was advocating. Kind of, I remember when he said, like, you want to be able to wake up when you want to be able to do what you want every day, these kind of things. You don't want to, be renting out your time. He talked about leverage, accountability. He talked about kind of how even if you're a doctor, even if you're a lawyer, you still have to be at a certain place at a certain time. You don't have that much leverage. You're never going to get rich renting out your time. Leverage meaning, like, if you have a product, a digital project, internet is very easy to get some leverage. If you have a digital product you could sell, it's something easier to sell. There's no like actual, hours and time you have to put in. Let me jump down over here. Give me 1 second. No actual time in hours that you have to put in to deliver the product. It's all digital, all done automated. So that's one way. Obviously, you got to start a business. I've said this before. I'll say it again. That's really the only way I know of on how to really obtain wealth. And people will say, like, oh, you could move up in a company. I have a lot of friends who always tell me, oh, you can move up in a company, and these high level areas of it, you'll make, I don't know, I guess what's the highest range you can get in a company? $1 million a year, $500,000 a year. The thing is, though, if you start a business and build it up, you're going to get a big payday. I'm talking $10 million, $20 million. That's actual, wealth, a high amount of wealth. And that could happen quicker than it could happen through, moving up in the corporation, moving up in that type of thing. This background is pretty cool with the waves coming up right here. But yeah, that was the main principle kind of I learned from Naval Ravikant, kind of like that type of thing. And, he said another thing, like, you have to find something that kind of looks like work to others, but feels like play to you. And I think, for me, it's a lot of these type of things. Like, I making videos like this, speaking, I think I studied it a lot. I studied this in college too. And I mean, college, a lot of the things I learned in college were things I learned that I kind of studied on my own, but I still learned at least a decent amount in communication skills, having a broadcast journalism, background, that type of thing, or degree. And I think it did help to a certain extent. This type of thing. Also, when I found crypto, and that's kind of how I found crypto out from, it was Naval Ravikant, and he was on Tim Ferriss's podcast about September of 2020, I believe, or yeah. So Labor Day of 2020, I was driving up from LA to San Francisco. I was listening to Naval Ravikant and Tim Ferriss, and he was talking about like crypto. And I knew about crypto beforehand. I was kind of into it, but never like put a significant amount of money into it. And I was hearing him say, like, what was he saying? Like, he basically implied, like, it could go to zero, but I don't think it will. I think we could be doing really well, wink, wink, kind of in the next, year or two. And if I tell you when to buy, then it would be useless because I would have to tell you when to sell. What, are you going to be calling me up every day? When should I sell? When should I sell? And that was a really good thing that, just the way he presented it on that podcast, it was like, I'm just like, I'm going in. I'm going all in, and we're going to see where this goes. And that's kind of how I got in there. And then I kept working on that and working and studying, kind of all I could about crypto, watching all the big crypto YouTubers at the time, end of 2020, studying it and studying all I could, kind of every waking minute I had. I was working a 9-to-5 job at the time, but every, waking minute I had where I didn't have to be doing something during the day, I would just look and study crypto, study TA, technical analysis. I didn't know, I thought TA was something, when you hear about day trading, the average person hates day trading too, but just day trading to certain people, and they're just like, oh, it's so risky. They automatically think they know everything about it, even though, how many, they probably just heard, they've probably read one article on it in their entire lives, maybe 2 articles on it in their entire lives, and they already have conclusions. Going back to what I was talking about earlier. But so I thought, based on kind of what I heard from other people, I thought it was really, really, really hard, semi-impossible. Kind of the thing too, like people playing status games, like they'll kind of say to you, that's another thing I learned about from Naval, Ravikant, people playing status games. They'll say like, oh, the rich, the people who win at day trading, they have a fix, they're cheating or some way. And, I normally don't like to say things like that. I feel like that's just excuses. I feel like people always just give excuses. Oh, it's pinned against me. Oh, I'm a victim because of this. And you're not going to get rich, just saying these excuses or whatever. You have to take accountability. And accountability could work both ways. Accountability is what could, make you rich or make you lose a lot of money. If I make a call and it's right, I have the accountability for that. I take credit for that. If I make a call and it's wrong, I take credit for that too. I'll get it wrong, and that will hurt my reputation or whatever. But more risk, more reward too. Just like crypto, just like the market cap, more risk, more reward. But a lot of different concepts being thrown at you at once right now. But in terms of that, I got into crypto, studied TA. So back to TA. So I thought it would be really hard, impossible, and I just kept studying, and I was like, these concepts are not anything too much more complicated, or maybe probably at the level of high school physics, maybe even I'd say easier in high school physics, probably maybe high school chemistry I took. Those, or high school, maybe algebra, it was kind of not any more complicated than that in terms of that, the IQ level you need for that, which is not crazy high. You obviously, you got to know how to retrade, you got to have an interest in it, those type of things, but it wasn't anything crazy like that. And I was just thinking about this, looking at this, and I'm like, wow, it's kind of I wouldn't say any, there's people, not anyone could do anything, obviously, but there's different, I say anyone could do anything, anyone who wants to, that's a different topic for a different day, but anyone who's, really passionate about something, really believes it and feels like they already achieved it, a lot of attraction, that type of thing. But it was not to the extent that I thought it would be. And I started watching, a lot of people got really into it and started studying it, and then it got to the point where everything kind of went the way a lot of people would say it would, up until kind of May of 2020, and I was getting to 2021, excuse me, and I was getting the feeling back then that maybe I wasn't even on YouTube at the point, but maybe we'll have a correction. When I saw Tom Brady with laser eyes, I knew so many people were getting into it. I was like, yeah, we might be getting to the end for a little bit here. We came back though. We came back, and now it feels kind of like we're repeating that type of thing. There's still enough fear, you gotta, the more fear, the more risk and accountability you can take, the smaller the market cap is of something when you get in, the more it can rise, the more it can go up. That's a very important thing to know. That's very powerful. More risk, more reward. You got to manage your risk though. But what people say today is it's different than it was back then, for the amount of hours you would work and all those type of things. Wealth distribution, that type of stuff. I think I heard multiple people say there's another YouTube channel I used to watch, not even a crypto related YouTube channel. I used to watch you talk about how you got to put all the money in on something, all the money you can afford to lose in on something, and hope that it does well. But the advantage you have is if you do a lot of research on it, if you really research it and really know what you're doing, you can be more confident than the average person. But the key thing is, what a lot of people don't realize, is don't put any money you can't afford to lose in it. That's where you get in hot water, because if it doesn't go well, then you move on to the next thing. And then statistically, with all the studying and all the research you do, you're going to get something that goes to the moon. You're going to get something that works and something that's going to get you higher. And there's different ways to do it. You know, maybe you could take some of that risk through leverage, having leverage, you know, multipliers, day trading like that. Maybe you could take some of that risk through just going in on something that's a smaller cap. You know, it would be the same as betting on a smaller cap is probably the same as just going on a bigger cap with higher leverage. That's that type of thing. And the other thing too, you know, in terms of wealth creation is, you know, this is a concept I learned in MJ DeMarco's book, The Millionaire Fastlane. It's like the more lives you change, the more money you're going to make. That's kind of how it is. The more people you help, the more money you're going to make, the more that's going to get given back to you. That's kind of maybe a world print. I don't know, just a common principle. Like the more people you influence, the more you will make. You know, the more people I've influenced through this YouTube channel, the more I have made through the channel, and the more I've made through other things as well. Kind of like that. So create something. I mean, create something that means something to you. It may not be a YouTube channel. It could be something else. Maybe it's writing. You know, there's a plethora of things, but yeah, create something and keep going with it and do it well. I mean, if you can do something well, if you're into something enough where you could do it better than, you know, 99% of people, if it looks like if it's play to you but work to others, then you could do it better than most people. And you don't need to spend, I mean, that's another kind of status signaling thing where people talk about like how they work 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day. This is Naval, Ravikant said this too. Like, no one really works, you know, at full capacity, those amount of hours. Like, sure, maybe you could have someone do monotonous nonsense for that many hours a day or whatever. The human body is capable of that, but your brain breaks down after a while. You're not going to be performing at high capacity at those amount of hours. I mean, the amount of hours I even, like, actual work right now doing, I mean, yeah, some days it's only a few hours. You know, some days it's not that much. For the most part, I mean, I'm very blessed in the sense that I mainly do what I want. But I mean, some of the things I do are, you know, going into an ice bath, these type of things. Like, there are things that the average person would probably pay money to avoid doing. You'd probably have to offer somebody a lot of money to do the things that I pay to do sometimes. One man's treasure is another man's trash. You know, what the rich view as cool sometimes is viewed as the poor as nonsense, and vice versa. So that's a different thing. You know, that's kind of the different way. People have different viewpoints. You know, you're going to be different if you're at the top. You're totally going to be, the average person probably won't be able to relate to you. It'll be different. So I think I've gone on for about 18 minutes now. I hope you guys got something out of this video. It's really cold out here. Hope you enjoyed the view too. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. All right, guys, have a good one. Goodbye.